Section 11.3, we're going to talk some more in this section about angles and how they, I would say how they relate to each other. That's not really a word I want. How we can describe them when they, their relationship to each other. That's what I want. How we describe their relationship to each other. So the first one, hang on just a second. The first one is vertical angles. So vertical angles are a pair of angles that appear across from each other whenever two lines intersect. So the first thing we have to do is we have to have intersecting lines for this to make any sense. So we've got a picture with intersecting lines. And angles are vertical angles when they are on opposite sides of those lines. So this one and this one would be considered vertical angles. And so would the top one and the bottom one. This one, that's not a very good color. Let's try something darker. This one and this one. Those would be vertical angles. And super cool to know, vertical angles are congruent. Remember, congruent means equal measure. So if we were to write these down, a reminder from, if it's last time or 2 class periods ago, we can talk about angle, let's do angle AEB. So angle AEB is right up here, which is its vertical angle pair. CED or DEC if you prefer, right? I'll write it that way since I was just thinking of it, DEC. What's the other pair of vertical angles in this picture? Say it loud for me.
BEC and AED.
BEC and AED, you said? AED. Okay? All right, another type of relationship that can exist between lines is complementary or supplementary. So complementary angles are two angles whose measures add up to 90 degrees. And we say that one of these angles is the complement of the other one. And then supplementary angles are two angles whose measures add up to 180 degrees. And we say that one of those angles supplements the other one. So complements and supplements. So with the pictures that we have here, let's see if we can write down an example, just an example because there's more than one in the first one at least, of complementary angles. So somebody give me one angle pair that would be complementary angles in this diagram. Okay, so let's check. AOD would be this one that I've marked in red, right? Really sloppily. And then DOF would be the one that I'm now marking in blue. And do both of those add up to, the measures of them add up to 90 degrees? Yes, so those would be complementary angles. How about supplementary angles with our next diagram? There's a couple pairs in there, actually. AOB and BOD. So AOB would be right here, my red one, and BOD would be the blue one right here. And do those add up to 180? Yeah, so those are supplementary angles. Other types of angles are formed when one line, called a transversal, intersects a pair of parallel lines in a plane. So we have to have parallel lines for the next description to create pairs of angles that are congruent, but they're parallel lines and they're crossed through by a transversal, and the transversal in this diagram is T. You can see it up here, okay? And it creates different pairs of angles that relate to each other. So the first thing to talk about is what is called interior angles. So I'm going to keep flipping back to this diagram, I think. Nope, I moved it onto every slide. How fantastic is that? You can keep flipping back to this diagram because I don't think I put it on every page of your notes. No, but I did put it on 2 pages. Wow, man, I was really on top of my game when I made these notes. Fantastic. All right, first one is interior angles. So interior angles are angles that lie between the pair of parallel lines, or between the pair of lines. So this pair of lines, what are the angles that lie in between the pair of lines? 2, 3, what else? 7, and 8. Okay, so visually it's these 4, right? They are in between this line and this line. So those are interior angles. Now, alternate interior angles have to be interior angles first of all. So you can't write down any number that I didn't already write down. Everybody cool with that? Okay, so I cannot write down 4, 1, 5, or 6 on the next description because they are not interior angles. But they have a specific type of relationship. In particular, they are alternate from one another. So if I talk about angle 3, it has to be on the opposite side of the transversal as angle 3 is. So the transversal T cuts through. The two angles that are on the opposite side are 8 and 7. Okay, so those are only options to be alternate interior angles. And the one that is actually alternate for it will be 7. So they lie on the opposite sides of the transversal and they are not adjacent. That's why it's not 8. So one pair of alternate interior angles here is angle 3 and angle 7. What is another pair of alternate interior angles in this diagram? 8 and 2. Right? And those are the only ones in this particular diagram. We've listed all of them. The next description that we can have is exterior angles. So exterior angles are angles that lie outside or on the other side of the pair of parallel lines, not in between them. So in my diagram, which angles are exterior angles? 5 and 6. What else? 4 and 1. Alternate exterior angles, much like the description for alternate interior angles, are pairs of exterior angles that lie on opposite sides of the transversal and are not adjacent. So let's start with 4, since it's just on the top of my diagram. What angle would be alternate exterior to angle 4? Sorry, angle 4. 6. So it can't be adjacent, so it can't be 1, and it can't be on the same side of the transversal, so it can't be 5. So the correct answer is 6. What is the other pair of alternate exterior angles? 5 and 1, or 1 and 5, yes. All right, one more definition and then we'll stop for today. Corresponding angles. Corresponding angles are angles that are in the same position where the transversal intersects one line and where it intersects the other line. So let me give you an example. There's lots of corresponding angles in the diagram. If I talk about angle 4, the angle that corresponds to it is angle 7. If you consider sort of this portion of the graph and this portion of the graph as two separate components, they're in the same location visually. So they're called corresponding angles. So we have angle 4 and angle 7. What's another pair of corresponding angles in this diagram? 6 and 3. Good. What else? 1 and 2. And then there's one more. 5 and 8. All corresponding angles. And we'll fill this in because they're all super helpful pieces of information. If corresponding angles are congruent, then alternate interior angles are congruent and alternate exterior angles are congruent and the lines are parallel. And not only that, but if you know one of those 4 pieces of information, all of the rest of them are true as well. So knowing any one of those 4 things guarantees the other 3, which is pretty cool. Parallel lines, you get everything congruent. Any of those congruences, you get parallel lines and the other congruences.